Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. So Friday Q&A. If you guys have any questions pertaining to real estate investing, real estate, any of those topics, financing, your real estate investment deals, um, fix and flip, buy and hold, wholesaling, any of those things, go ahead, ask the questions. Ask the questions in the comment section. So this is for you. We'll start off with some questions, but if you guys have any questions, go ahead. Just go ahead and ask them. And so, you want to start off with some questions?
I do. How you doing? How's everyone doing today? Happy Friday. So, Greg, we've got an investor looking for properties in D.C. She came across a distressed property, and that property had a sign in the yard from the DCRA abatement team. She wants to know, should she stop following up with the owner and just communicate with the code enforcement officer?
Wait, I'm sorry. I was reading. There was a comment here.
Want me to repeat?
Yeah, let me write this down. They said they didn't receive our 8-week course. Okay. All right. Yeah, go ahead.
So, Greg, we have an investor looking for properties in D.C. They came across a distressed property, and there was a sign in the yard from the DCRA abatement team. So the investor wants to know, should she stop following up with the owner and just communicate with the code enforcement officer or the code enforcement office?
No, you always communicate with the owner of the property. And so code enforcement, that's just could be a lien on the property from the DC government, but just could be a violation. So that's really nothing. And so that would be taken care of at settlement. It's probably just some type of fine. But no, you always pursue the owner. Sometimes the owner is the bank if it's a foreclosure, so you pursue the bank. But whoever the owner of the property is, you always pursue them. And in this case, she just needs to skip trace and find the homeowner's name and number and call them.
Okay. Thanks for that. So, Greg, one investor wants to know, what is your personal real estate strategy for DC and in Baltimore? Are you doing anything differently than what you did as far as the strategy, say from last October, November, and
Um,
going new year? What is your strategy?
and so I would probably say that I've kind of changed my strategy. My strategy is definitely now geared more towards buy and hold. I'm seeing the market really appreciating in the last couple of years, and so buying and holding, primarily in Prince George's County, Maryland, buying and holding in Prince George's County, Maryland, because, like I said, the market values are really appreciating, but the rents just went up. So they put a new person in charge of Section 8. Actually, that person came from DC Housing, and she came in and she increased all the rents in Prince George's County. And so now you can buy a rental property and get more from the county with Section 8 than you could before. So it's definitely, I'm buying and holding. Got a property, a 6-unit building in Baltimore, in the Reservoir Hill area. And so this really got me intrigued with multifamily in Baltimore. As most of you guys know, Baltimore, you can buy low. Baltimore is the number one residential rental city in the United States where you can buy low and rent high. And so the 6-unit was like $400,000. That same building in, let's say, DC would be more than double the price, but the rents are almost the same. So Baltimore definitely buying and holding, but probably shift towards multifamily. Um, in DC, if I can get a good deal in DC and hold on to it, like I have some in DC, and the appreciation is just incredible. And so cash flow is not as good as, say, Prince George's County, Maryland, or Baltimore, Maryland. But the appreciation in DC is just like 20% across the board. In some areas in DC, like the Trinidad section of DC, they've experienced over the last 5 or 6 years a 70% increase in appreciation. And there's other areas like that. So you can get something in DC and hold on to it over a number of years. I mean, that's good retirement money. One of my regrets is, a year out of college, 23 years old, I started buying real estate only in DC. And, I tell this to our students all the time. I wish I would have held on to those properties. I held on to them for 5, 6 years and then sold those properties, said I was going to take that money, that capital gain, and put it into bigger properties, and just really never did. And so I wish I would have held on to those properties. One property in DuPont Circle in Northwest DC, I bought for $50,000. It's a 1-bedroom condo. Now they're selling for about $900,000. So you live and you learn. But the lesson, you guys, is you buy a piece of property anywhere, hold on to it as much as you can. Hold on to that. And again, you guys, if you guys have any questions, go ahead and put them in the comment section, and we're more than happy to answer the questions. A lot of familiar names on here. Jackie Bethel is back in the house. All right. Any other questions, Keith?
Yeah, I got another one. A flipper wants to know, in the process of rehabbing a flip, is it recommended to have several subs on site working on different aspects of the rehab?
Well, that's a good question. I would probably say no. There's a certain order that you need on a rehab project. It's okay to have a crew working on the inside. Let's say they're doing framing or electrical, and then somebody on the outside, say working on the roof or the siding or something like that. But you don't want the different subs, stumbling over each other. You never ever want that. So if your electrician is there doing the rough-in electrical, they're the only ones inside the house. So if your plumber is in there changing the pipes, or if your HVAC guy is in there, running the new ducts, they should be the only ones in there. Because here's the problem: they start stumbling over each other. Tools get missing. They start blaming each other. It's just too much of a mess. I prefer having maybe a crew on the inside and a crew working on the outside, but no two separate subs working on the inside together. And then the electrician, the carpenter, the drywall guy, the HVAC guy, they need their own space. They need room. And so no, you don't want to do that. Because and then they're just fighting over each other, they're judging each other's work. I mean, it's just a mess.
Yeah, I'm sure you have a lot of war stories there.
Stories, but I don't want to. But we don't have enough time. But I've got all kinds of stories. Contractors, yeah. I got stories, but I'll save them for another day.
Greg, I have another question here. How do you handle a property with a reverse mortgage?
And so reverse mortgage, for those that don't know, I think it's either 62 and over or 65 and over. I always get them mixed up. But you can get a mortgage from a lender where basically you don't have to, once the lender loans the money, you don't have to pay a mortgage for the rest of your life. But the confusing part for people is the word reverse. And so for me, it's just a mortgage that has to be paid off. There's still a balance on the mortgage that has to be paid off. And so oftentimes either a loved one will pass away and the heirs are trying to sell the property, or the homeowner who has a reverse mortgage wants to sell. There's just a mortgage balance and it just needs to be paid off. So if they want to sell, they just need to sell for enough money to pay off the mortgage that just happens to be a reverse mortgage. I do think that reverse mortgages are a good strategy for some who really haven't prepared for retirement. So I do think for some people, reverse mortgage is a good strategy because now you're going into retirement not having a mortgage to pay. And generally in retirement, your mortgage is your highest bill. And so I do think it's a good strategy. The downside of a reverse mortgage is, at least for that property or that asset, there's, you know, you're not leaving an inheritance. So that house is not an inheritance. So a lot of people don't do it. A lot of people don't do it because they want to leave their children the house, but then they suffer in retirement. So I do think it's a good strategy, reverse mortgages for some people, so that basically so they have their own, you know, living benefits of the house while they're still living. But then some kind of grapple with, you know, not leaving an inheritance for the children. But in paying off a reverse mortgage, let's say the balance of a reverse mortgage is $300,000, you just have to, you know, just pay that off. And so that's the only thing. And I do see a lot of investors getting confused because of the word reverse. Just take the word reverse out of it. It's just a mortgage. And if whatever the mortgage balance is, that balance just has to be paid off.
Okay. Here's another question, Greg. Can you use a sales contract to put a lien on a property?
You can use a contract to put a lien on the property. We call that a les pendants. And so if you see that, or if you think that the seller is going to sell the house up from under you, even though you're under contract,
right?
You can file that that legal action in court using a contract to put a lien on the property so that the property can't be sold. Then when you purchase a property, you just release the lien off the property. But by putting the lien on the property, and you can use that legal instrument, which is the contract, you can stop everything from selling. And just like a contractor can put what's called a mechanic's lien on a property to stop the sale, an investor or one that's buying the property can do the same thing by using their contract.
Okay. Let's see here.
And again, you guys, if you have any questions, let me know. And if you guys know anyone that's interested in real estate investing, go ahead and share this live with them.
All right, Greg. So there's a homeowner that's lived at a property for more than 2 years. It stayed in the family and he rented it out. But now it's been vacant for a couple of years now. Can he 1031 exchange that property?
Yeah, I mean, anyone that sells the property, if the property is his property, the house was deeded to him, and it's his property. When he sells that property, whatever profit that he has, the net profit that he has, is called a capital gain, and that's a taxable event, which means he's got to pay taxes on that property. One of the ways to keep him from having to pay the capital gain is taking that capital gain. Let's say the net profit was $50,000. He's got to pay taxes on it. He can take that $50,000 and do an exchange. So take that property, put that on another property, and now that capital gain is not forgiven. The taxes are deferred, and so now that capital gain goes on to the other property. That's called a 1031 exchange. So he can do that as long as he owns the property. When he sells the property, now keep in mind, if the property is not an investment property, but if it's his personal residence, if this property is his personal residence and he can prove that it's his personal residence, then $250,000, the first $250,000, he doesn't have to pay capital gain taxes. But anything over $250,000, if it's his personal residence, is a capital gain. And so on your personal residence, and Jackie, we were talking yesterday. I didn't ask you if that house. I think that house that you were selling was an investment property. But if you could prove that it was your personal residence, like when you file taxes, it has that address. You don't have to pay capital gains for the first $250,000 if you're a single individual. But if you're a couple, you have up to $500,000 in capital gain that's forgiven if that's your personal residence.
Very good. So, Greg, here's an LLC question. Is there a benefit for an investor to have an LLC in their personal name in addition to their businesses?
So whenever you're doing business of any kind, real estate, whatever, insurance, business of any kind, you want to do an LLC. You don't want to do any business in your personal name. So you want to shield yourself. You want to shield yourself from any type of legal action. So you want to get the protection of a corporation. And a corporation, the only thing that the corporation gets sued, the only thing that gets sued is what's in the corporation or what the corporation owns. And the LLC is the same way. And so let's just say you've got one house in the LLC. If that LLC gets sued, then the only thing that gets sued is the LLC. And then nothing personal or any other houses that's not in the LLC can be sued. But then when it comes to taxes, unlike a corporation, when it comes to taxes, when you're an LLC, you get sued as an individual at a lower rate than you do as a corporation. So you have the benefits of the protection of a corporation, but then you also have the benefits of being taxed individually. That's why we have an LLC. And so anything we do, we want an LLC. We don't want to put in our personal name. We put a house in our personal name, somebody slips and falls. Because the house is in our personal name, now they can sue everything personally that we own. And so we don't want that. So any business of any type, I tell my real estate agents to get an LLC. I'm going to pay you your commission in your LLC. We're telling our insurance agents the same thing. We're going to pay you. You set up your own LLC, your own agency, and we or the insurance carriers are going to pay you through your LLC. And so LLC for everything. And so the answer to the question is nothing personal. And so we want to, we don't want to own anything in our name. We just want to control it. We want to control everything, but own nothing in our LLC, in our personal name. And we can control it through the business entity LLC. Everything is LLC. Nothing is personal.
Well said. So, Greg, one investor wants to know, in your rentals and through your career, do you recommend in your properties that you rent, do you recommend installing a washer and dryer in the rental properties?
Oh, that's a really good one. So do I recommend putting a washer and dryer in my rental properties? I do. I do. I want my rental properties to be as attractive as possible. I want to attract really good tenants. Even though the washer and dryer is an expense, I want to put it in. It's really not that, it's not expensive to put a washer and dryer in there. But yeah, I put washer and dryers in my rental properties. I know a lot of investors don't. They leave it up to the tenants. But yeah, I do. And then furthermore, I try to renovate my rental properties as if I'm going to live in there. I do that for a number of reasons, but primarily because it just cuts down on the wear and tear. I don't put carpet in my rental properties. I put either real hardwood floors or engineered hardwood floor. sometimes a really nice laminate. Uh, because the worst thing that you can have in a rental property, the thing that you try to protect yourself against is turnover. And so you don't want a lot of turnover. When turnover hits, that's when you're spending money, because you've got less money coming in because people have moved out. Now when they move out, you've got to fix the property back up again. And so you want to guard against turnover. One of the ways to guard against turnover is making the property as nice as possible so they don't want to leave. And then you want to be very attentive when when something breaks down or they're asking for something. I have a tenant in one of my properties in DC, and that property, from the time that they moved in to now, I've gained $400,000 in equity. They called me and said, "Mr. Bennett, can you put up a fence?" And I ran over there with my contractor, and we put up a fence because I want to keep that tenant happy. That tenant takes care of that property probably better than I could. And in her mind, she's got ownership in that property. Someone broke into it's a regular DC row house in the Deanwood section. It's actually semi-detached, and with the alley, with the parking, I put a parking pad in the back, and somebody broke into our house. So she wanted a fence with a gate that she could lock, and I obliged because I want to keep her happy. She's helped me make over $400,000 in equity in like 3 years. And so why wouldn't I do that? You know, I look at the numbers like, yeah, it's well worth it. Plus, putting up a fence is a tax write-off anyway. And so I can write that off. So yeah, I try to make my rental properties, very nice. I don't want to give them a reason to leave because now I'm losing money when they leave. Turnover is the worst thing you want when you have buy and hold properties. And then you want to, be able to screen good tenants. And by screening good tenants, that means, obviously they're going to fill out an application, whether they're Section 8 or not. We run their credit, we run their background, their criminal background. But then we also either call the last landlord or we go to see where they're living now to see how they take care of their properties. And so we go through all that to pick the right tenant. And sometimes when we renovate a property, it might take us 2 or 3 months to get the right tenant, but it's just well worth it. You've got to have the right tenants. You get the right tenants, they will possibly pay off. I've got some buddies of mine that they've had tenants for over 20 years. The tenants have paid off the property. The last property that you've seen on Fernleaf, I bought that property recently and recently renovated it. The girl who sold me the property was one of my agents who bought the property over 20 years ago. And I helped her buy it over 20 years ago. And she had the same tenant for that period of time. When she sold me the property was paid for with that one tenant. Property was paid for. She only sold it because she wanted money to pay off her daughter's college tuition, so the daughter wouldn't have any student loans, and then she needed the money for some other stuff. I told her not to sell it, to refinance, but then she really didn't do much to the house in the 20 years, so it needed a lot of work. Tenant was still in there, but your tenants, if you treat them well, they will pay off your mortgages for you, or at least stay there 5 years, 10 years. And so that's what I've always wanted. And that's what I've always strived for with my rental properties, keeping that tenant in there as long as possible. There will never, ever be an issue on washer and dryer, or I know someone else who has a rental property called me, and he asked me, the refrigerator broke down. And he asked me, should I buy a new refrigerator? I'm like, dude, seriously? Buy a new refrigerator for your tenant. Keep them happy. It's cheaper for you to buy a new refrigerator versus having them move out. Much cheaper. And so that's what we've got to do. We've got to take care of our properties. It's an asset. each property is it's its own business entity, and that's how we've got to look at it. And it's not a hindrance for the tenant to call and say, I need something, because what that tenant is doing is helping you build wealth. And that's what we want. That's why we buy rental properties. I see a lot of landlords just bailing out because of, the tenants, the termites, and the always forget the last T. Tenants, termites, and what is huh?
Toilets.
The toilets, termites, and tenants. The three T's. Don't bail out. Stay in there. You're building wealth. Best way to build wealth is through rental properties. Better than the stock market. So hang in there. Buy a property, buy one a year, and hang in there.
Greg, here's an auction question. A wholesaler wants to know, when should they, in the process of going to bid on a property, when should they reach out to the cash buyer that they want to use?
So a wholesaler wholesaling properties, if they want to wholesale a auction property, 100% of the time they have to do what we call reverse wholesaling. They've got to get the cash buyer first, then and then ask the cash buyer what they would pay for the property, and then now they know what to bid. For example, we have one of our agents, one of our agent investors, asked me. I forget which property it was now, but I bought the property, and I don't remember which one it was now. But it was like 2 years ago. It was Columbus. He was bidding on a property. He said, "Greg, what would you buy the property for?" And I told him, which was 125. Property will come to me. And and he got to 125 and won the bid. And I remember him running downstairs, excited. He won the bid, and I said, "Cool, let's go. Let's do the paperwork." But he got the price from me first. He bid on the property, and then I closed on the deal, and I paid him a wholesale fee. And so you want to talk to your cash buyers first, get their input, because, and this just happened. This just happened like last week. There's an investor who purchased the property at an auction, won the bid at the auction, and they weren't wholesaling the property though. They were actually buying the property, but they didn't go get their financing first. They put up like $25,000 as a deposit at the auction, which was non-refundable. They didn't do their due diligence before the auction in terms of getting financing. Ended up couldn't get financing. Bought the property wrong, but couldn't get financing, and they lost the $25,000. So look, you guys, a lot of our platinum coaching students, a lot of them are here. We teach them, do the work first. If you're wholesaling an auction property, talk to your cash buyer first. If you're financing the property to fix and flip or to buy and hold, get your financing first, then bid on the property. So that now you've got a property, and now you can't do anything with, because you don't have a cash buyer to wholesale it to, or you can't get financing. All auctions, you've got to put up a deposit. Now you lose your deposit. So take your time, do your due diligence first, and then go ahead and bid on the properties. But I will tell you that auction properties, especially in this day and age, 2022, because of the pandemic and forbearance agreements on mortgages, it's a ton of foreclosures now, ton of auction properties. I would say, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I would say our platinum coaching students, the majority of them are buying their properties and wholesaling their properties from the auction. Like, they're going to the auction, they're bidding online on the online auctions. And so most of them are getting their properties that way.
Okay, let's see here.
Here's a question. I'm not quite sure the answer. Greg, how do nonprofit loans work for rehabbing properties in Baltimore. And so I would say that they work fine. It's just a loan. The loan is to a nonprofit. Um, Generally, with a nonprofit, they're either going to flip the property um, and sell it to someone, sell affordable housing, or they're going to rent the property out. But you can get, but nonprofits, because I was many years ago, I was a nonprofit developer. You can get monies from the government, different government agencies, but they really don't want you to flip unless you turn the property into affordable housing. But there's plenty of loans. Actually, FHA has nonprofit. Loans for nonprofits. Just do the research, but there's lots of programs that you can actually flip properties or buy and hold, but it's got to be for affordable housing. But the loans work very similar to, your standard normal loans.
Greg, here's a related question. Investor asked about the $1 house program that's supposedly coming back to Baltimore. Is it even worth pursuing programs like that?
So just be careful. So Baltimore, they do have a program, and with the new mayor in Baltimore, there's an initiative to sell all the houses that are in blighted neighborhoods, all the board ups.
Yeah.
There is that $1 program, but generally speaking, those properties are in very, very bad neighborhoods with a ton of board ups. The only saving grace is if you can buy a block, and buying a block is like, unless you're, like we just talked about, a nonprofit, unless you're a nonprofit and the city actually owns the block, it's going to be very, very difficult for you to get a whole block, because if the city doesn't own the block, they are taking over blocks of houses and then selling the blocks to nonprofits for affordable housing. But if it's not that, now you've got to talk to each individual homeowner, and that's very, very difficult to get each homeowner to sell their properties. So I was part of a nonprofit recently that the city actually gave a couple blocks on Harlem Avenue, actually, in Baltimore. But there was big write up and big proposal. They got both private and public money. What they wanted me to do in the project just didn't work out, so I kind of bailed out. But they did get a couple blocks from the city of Baltimore for like no money, for like little to no money. And the really big brownstones in the Upton area. If you guys want to know some of the better or the up and coming areas of Baltimore, put down Upton as one, because the city is putting in a lot of money into the Upton area. And so I would really invest there in Upton. But yeah, it's hard getting houses, buying individual houses. You've got to buy the blocks, and then but then also, and you want to take a ride around and look at the address, look at the properties. But I always found them undesirable for me. Here's a question. If you use your name as part of an LLC, for example, your name Realty LLC, is this okay, or should you use a generic name? No, I would say that's definitely okay. I mean, I have Bennett Team Properties LLC, Bennett Realty Solutions LLC, so that's fine. So you can use your name Realty LLC, no problem, because that's still a separate entity. That is not, so Bennett Team Properties LLC is not Greg Bennett. It stands on its own. It's its own entity. It has its own tax ID number, its own articles of incorporation. So it stands as its own entity. It's taxed separately, all of those things. So you can definitely use your own name as part of a name in an LLC. So that's a good question. Faye has a question. Hey, Faye, when buying rentals, should you put each property in an LLC or an S corp? If you do this, isn't it costly to renew the LLC annually? So that's actually a really, really good question. And because of the last part, if you do this, isn't it costly to renew? So I don't put each individual house in its own separate LLC. I know some people do that. What I do is I'll put 2 or 3 properties in its own LLC. Faye is right. If it costs somewhere between $300 and $400 here in our area for each LLC that you've got to renew. Some would say that it's cheaper to do that versus one of them maybe getting sued one day. But I put 2 or 3 properties in an LLC. Then I start another LLC and put 2 or 3 properties in that LLC. And so that's how I do it, just to save a little bit of money every year when you've got to renew the LLC. So I don't do individually. Let's see, any other questions? Doreen has a question. There was 2 cities mentioned on the news with really low crime. Do you know what they are? 2 cities. I'm not sure, Doreen. I'm not sure I'm not sure what cities that was mentioned that has really low crime rate. There's a lot of cities that have really low crime rate, though. Any other questions? Okay.
Greg, I have a question here. An investor wants to know, and maybe this is good for the times we're in, how are the vaccination mandates impacting the real estate markets in and around DC and Baltimore? Do you notice people moving away, people moving into the big city? Have you seen any updates or more or less activity of renters? That's a pretty good question for the environment that we're currently in. What's your take on that?
I think so. In Washington, D.C., there's a vaccination. For those that don't know, there's a vaccination mandate that basically says if you're entering into a gym or like an arena sporting event or a restaurant, you have to show your vaccination card or you can't get in. And you have to have at least 1 dosage of a vaccine in order to get in. And so I don't think that impacts the restaurant industry, and it impacts entertainment and shopping centers and those types of things. But that doesn't, in my opinion, affect real estate. Furthermore, that vaccination mandate is temporary. That it should be lifted, in my opinion, another 2 or 3 months. Surrounding DC, we have Virginia and Maryland. They don't have those type of mandates. So people will either show their vaccination card or dine or go to the gym in Maryland or Virginia. But that vaccination mandate doesn't affect the real estate market. As a matter of fact, I read an article yesterday that said that, well, number one, we're obviously in a seller's market. There's more sellers than buyers. I mean, we're in a seller's market. There's more buyers than sellers. There's a lack of inventory. The market is hotter this year than it was this time last year. The market is hotter. We're getting more offers on properties on the market now, 2022, than we did last year. And last year was just incredible. Last year, for every property, we must have gotten 5 or 6 or 7 offers, and houses sold in a day. This year is even hotter. So vaccination does not have an impact. The only impact that it might have, and this is not vaccination, this is just the pandemic in general, is because of the pandemic, there's a lack of sellers wanting to sell, coupled with buyers wanting to buy because of the low interest rates, even though interest rates are starting to creep up a little bit. That's what's really causing the seller's market. But the vaccination mandate actually has nothing to do with our real estate market. Absolutely nothing. Buyers are still out here buying. I actually put that property on Fernleaf. I was supposed to rent it out, but decided to sell it. We put that property on the market probably, I don't know, maybe Tuesday or Wednesday. And in one day, we got an offer $10,000 above list price.
Wow.
Vaccination has nothing to do with real estate. $10,000 over list price, asking for no seller help, no home inspection, none of that. And so we're still in a hot market. And so for investors, for real estate investors, this is the type of market that you want to be in. You want to get these properties at the auction or wherever you get them, driving for dollars, bandit signs. And then if you're flipping, you want to hurry up and renovate them and put them on the market while the market is still hot. And so I had a property last year in Northeast DC that I bought for $300,000, put $160,000 into it. So I'm all in at $460,000. I put it on the market for like $625 because that's where the comps were. It got bidded up to $650 within 2 or 3 days. It got multiple offers. So we're in a hot market all across the country, not just here in the DMV, all across the country. And so, but even with buy and holds, if you're holding properties, if you can get them at a good price, you're seeing, and I'm seeing them really appreciate in value. So they're going up in value. And I don't foresee the market changing. I remember 2 years ago in 2020, when the pandemic hit, it was doom and gloom for the real estate industry. But that's all changed now. That's all changed, but it never did. I mean, we just kind of went into more of a seller's market, and it hasn't relented, and it won't this year. And so we're going to see, appreciation. We're going to see houses selling in a day or two. We're also going to see offers being $20,000, $40,000, $50,000 above list price. And so we're going to see all those things this year in 2022. So if you want to invest in real estate, it's just a really good time to get out here and get some properties.
Greg, on that same that same subject, vaccination, do you see a lot of landlords that maybe were carrying their tenants for a while, maybe because the tenants lost their jobs and could not pay rent? Do you notice a lot of landlords giving up on their property and selling?
Absolutely. So we see a lot of landlords needing to sell because some of them have simply lost their jobs. They've lost their jobs, but then a lot of the tenants have too. And so there was a restriction here in our area, or a moratorium, where landlords couldn't evict their tenants during the pandemic. That was lifted months ago. And so now it's just getting the tenants out, going to court, going to landlord-tenant court, getting the tenants out, and now they want to sell. And so we're seeing a lot of landlords. And so those of you who work the absentee owners, be it getting an absentee owner list, calling them, be it sending a direct mail to a list of absentee owners, this is the time to do it. And so you can get those lists all across the country. There's different lists that you can get, but you can get a list of absentee owners, and you can call them, cold call them, because you can get their phone numbers, and you can mail to them, and they're wanting to sell. Or you can simply, what a lot of our investors do is they just simply go to landlord tenant court every day and pass out their business cards. We've got a question from Crystal. She says, know someone who wants to sell, not not in a rush, not underwater or anything. Curious to know, could this be a potential person to try to offer a deal? If so, what? Yeah, I mean, obviously, yeah, definitely you can make them an offer. You make them an offer according to, what the market dictates, or what the formula dictates. So say, for example, Crystal, that they're in an area where the after repair value, once the house is fixed up, is worth, let's just say, 400,000. Then you use the formula. You take 70% of the 400,000, which is 280, and then you subtract by the repair cost. Let's say the repair cost is 80,000, so the 280 minus the 80 is 200,000. So that's what you offer, the 200,000. But you use the formula. We call it the Mayo formula, maximum allowable offer, and so that's what you offer them. That's the type of deal. That's what you offer. But taking that a step further, depending on their situation, you could, ask them a few questions, see if it might be a good deal for creative financing. And so it could be a creative financing deal where they could either hold the note, they could be the bank as seller financing. It could be a subject to where you can bring the mortgage current if it's behind, have them move out. You take over the mortgage payments until you're able to renovate the property, then sell. Could be a lease option. You could lease the property, sublet it out for a year or two, or lease the property, fix it up. I mean, there's just so many things you can do. I would need to know more information, but sounds like it could be a really good creative financing deal. Let's see. Faith has a statement. She says, good news for Baltimore investors. Governor Hogan has received funds to relocate immigrants to Baltimore. They are eligible for Section 8 vouchers and other government programs. Okay. All right. So if that's what you guys want for your properties, there was already a backlog in Baltimore for voucher holders. And so now it looks like there's going to be even a bigger backlog. All right, Key, we got time for about 2 more questions.
So, Greg, here's one question, and we get this from time to time. The solo 401k, and why is that more advantageous than a regular 401k as an investor? And then finally, where can you get information on the solo 401k?
All right, so you can go to mysolo401k.com, mysolo401k.com to get more information. The differences between a regular 401k and a solo 401k is the solo 401k is an instrument whereby it's a retirement plan whereby you can take the money out with no penalty, and then invest it in an asset such as real estate, and whatever capital gain you gain from that investment, you can bring it back to the solo 401k, either tax deferred or could be tax free if your solo 401k is a Roth solo 401k, which means you tax the capital gain, and then what's left over you bring back to the solo 401k. Now in the solo 401k, you're building a tax-free retirement, as opposed to a regular 401k. If you take money out, you're penalized for taking it out. That's basically the difference. So The solo 401k, in my opinion, was set up for the investor and the solo practitioner um, as another way to defer their taxes and to build wealth. Could be to build a tax-free retirement, but to shield themselves from the capital gains from real estate. And then when you reach a certain age, 59 and a half or 71 and a half, you've got to start taking the money out, but you're taking the money out at a lower tax rate than you did probably when you put that money back in.
Okay. Last question I have, Greg. Investor wants to know, is real estate investing, is it easier if you already own a property?
Is it easier if you already own a property? I think that's probably a financing question. And so some financing programs, especially if you're buying and holding an investment property, I just did a refinance on one of my investment properties. And one of the criteria was I had to own a property, a primary residence. And so that was a criteria for that program. Otherwise, no, it doesn't really matter. I remember in my early 20s, all the properties that I did buy were rental properties. And I loved it. I lived in an area in DC called, called Adams Morgan. Loved Adams Morgan, had an efficiency apartment in Adams Morgan. Loved my efficiency. I was in the heart of Adams Morgan. So I just kept buying rental properties, renting them out, and stayed in my little efficiency apartment that I loved. I walked everywhere. It was lovely. But even now, I would highly recommend, though, not doing what I did. I would highly recommend buying a primary residence first, then buying investment properties. I would highly recommend that. But you don't have to. If you want to go the route that I went and buy investment properties first, which again, I don't recommend, you can do that. And one of the primary reasons why I say that is because even though, I'm 23, 24, 25, 26 years old buying rental properties, I'm still paying rent to somebody else. I'm still paying rent to a landlord that I'm helping them build wealth, even though I was building wealth on my other properties. And so that's why I highly recommend owning your own property first, getting the tax benefits of home ownership, starting the process of building wealth, building equity. And then once you've established that, then buy property. Because what you can do is, what a lot of people do, and hopefully my daughter's going to do, she just bought a house in May. And so she's now in her house. My goal for her is to buy another house this year, towards the end of this year, and rent out the property that she just recently bought last year. So now she's got two properties, and now she's building wealth with two properties. And so that's one of the reasons why I just highly recommend owning property first, primary residence. And then with her primary residence, she bought it at a discount. It was a fixer-upper. She might be able to, probably not, but she might be able to pull some equity out to buy that property this year. Or like I said, some of the buy and hold programs, there's a great program that I used, and our lender here at PRMG has it, where it's a no-doc loan. It's basically a no-doc loan, but one of the criteria is you have to have a primary residence. And if you have your primary residence, you have a credit score as low as 620, you can basically buy a investment property with little to no money down. And so hopefully she'll be able to do that. She wouldn't be able to do that if in this program she didn't have a primary residence. And if you guys are interested in that program, just DM me and I'll get you the information for that program. Let's see. You have any more questions, Keith?
No, I'm done.
I think we've got, let's see, Matthew is saying, what's the licensing process in Maryland to get your real estate license? I'm assuming your real estate license. Yeah, you just have to take the course. And so we used to teach the course. Once the pandemic hit, we just co-branded with the CE Shop. So Matthew, if you want to DM me, I'll give you our link. If you want to take the course online, I'll give you our link to take the real estate course. And again, I often get the question, do you need a real estate license to be a real estate investor? The answer is no, but I highly recommend it. And it's because, and it's for the reason I got my real estate license many years ago, you just have better access if you're a real estate agent. Let's see. Yeah, I think that's it. I think that's okay. All right. Yeah. If you guys want any information on any loan programs, just DM me and I will put you in the right direction. Especially if it's an investor loan. You know, we've got some loan officers that's all they focus on is investor loans. They would love to talk to you and you know, figure out your situation and to help you get financing. The days of having to put down 20% or 25% on investment property, those days they're not over. There are programs, but there's some better programs where you don't have to put down all that money. Just DM me. See, Greg, I would like to get that info on that program. No doubt. Okay, yeah, just send me a message. I'll try to write down your handle. Let's see. Real estate with what's that? I think it's MRD. Okay. All right. Hey, Jackie. All right, you guys. Any other questions before we get out of here? We're right at 1 o'clock. We're going to try to be here every Friday at noon to answer all of your real estate investment questions. We often get a lot of questions about investing in other cities. And so I think next week, okay, Faye, you guys DM me, but I will write your name down, Faye. I think next week I'm going to try to have a couple people on here that specialize in Baltimore, Maryland. A lot of you guys on the East Coast are very interested in investing in Baltimore, Maryland. As I said earlier, Baltimore is the #1 residential rental city in the United States because you can buy low and rent high. And so we're going to take a deep dive into questions about investing in Baltimore. And so if you guys have any questions for next Friday, you can contact either myself or Keith. If you guys want some more information on real estate investing, go to my bio. Click on the link in my bio. There's a free real estate investment class that you guys can take. There's a master class that I have in there. It's free of charge, and it goes over every aspect of real estate investing. So if you're interested in getting more information, more knowledge on real estate investing, click on the link in my bio. There's a free class in there that you guys can take to get you more educated. Also, if you guys are interested in, some of you guys are interested in getting your real estate license, click on the link in my bio, join Bennett Realty Solutions. So it's joinbrs.com. You can set your own appointment and talk to us about joining our brokerage. Our agents are well versed in both selling real estate and investing in real estate. All right, Keith, I think that is it. All right. We got another one down. All right, you guys, take care. God bless. Have a wonderful weekend. Let's build wealth together. It's 2022. Let's live up to our fullest potential. Let's get out there and take action. and let's build wealth. Let's build generational wealth. All right, take care. God bless, and we will talk to you guys soon. Have a great day and a great weekend. Super Bowl Sunday. Let's go, Cincinnati Bengals. Cincinnati Bengals. Let's go.